What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have Phillipe and Rina continuing to interact with each other. Phillipe is looking like the more dominant storm going into this. Rina is just doing whatever it's doing at this point. We're also watching the Caribbean once again for potential development due to a Central American gyre that is starting to develop over in Central America. So we'll have to keep an eye on it as time continues to go on. But in the meantime, we have Phillipe and Rina to talk about. Here's the latest on Phillipe to start with. 50-mile-per-hour winds with a pressure of 999 millibars. It's been a trooper all this time. It's continued to organize and continue to strengthen as we look at this. It's moving southwest at 5 miles per hour. Its current location is 16.9 degrees north, 56.3 degrees west, so that's a pretty interesting situation. And based off of what we're looking at with the cone, it does appear that the tropical storm force winds are starting to get more and more organized as we speak. We'll have to wait and see how that southwestern quadrant fills up. But in the meantime, it is expected to start making that turn towards the west-northwest and then to the northwest before strengthening into a hurricane as time continues to go on as it drifts out to sea. So that's what we have with the public. Here's the public advisory. It is currently located 455 miles east of the northern Leeward Islands. Once again, hurricane hunters are forecasted to investigate Phillipe later today. We'll go ahead and see if they are on the way. Yeah, they actually made it to Phillipe. They actually are conducting recon in Phillipe as of right now. They're finding flight level winds exceeding 40 knots as when I am recording this. They're also finding SFMR values around 40 to 45 knots, basically confirming the 50-mile-per-hour wind readings that we are getting at this current time. They are currently about to sample the strongest part of the storm by far, so we'll have to keep a very close eye on it as time continues to go on. Tropical storm force winds still extend out 140 miles from the center at this current time, so we'll have to keep a very close eye on it as time continues to go. Here's the discussion right here. The satellite presentation of Phillipe has not changed very much this morning. The partially exposed low-level circulation lies on the western edge of the deep convection mass as northwesterly shear continues to affect the storm structure. The estimated motion for Phillipe is moving southwestward. Phillipe is not expected to move much during the next 12 to 24 hours, although there is uncertainty even in the near term related to the extent of the interaction between Phillipe and Tropical Storm Rina to its northeast. Most of the models show a slow and generally westward motion during the next day or so, which is reflected in the NHC forecast. They are increasingly, the model spread increases in regards to the timing of Phillipe's turn at this point, with several models calling for it hitting in the Antilles, while others are having it stay out to sea. Given the sheared structure of Phillipe, only minor intensification fluctuations are expected during the next 12 to 24 hours. Shear is forecast to generally decrease on Monday and Tuesday, and after that, it is expected to start gradually strengthening into that hurricane I was talking about earlier. In the next 12 hours, it is expected to strengthen into a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm, 65 miles per hour in 36, and then becomes a hurricane in the next 60 hours. So we'll have to wait and see and pay attention to see how all this plays out. We'll have to keep a very close eye on it. Dvorak classifications have generally been steady, so the initial intensity remains at 45 knots or 50 miles per hour for this advisory. Hurricane hunters are already in Phillipe as of right now, so we'll have to wait and see what that reconnaissance really shows in the next little while or so. So that's what we have going on with Tropical Storm Phillipe. Next thing we're showing you is Tropical Storm Rina, and Rina is also showing a little bit of strengthening, about 45 mile per hour winds at the current time, pressure of 1,002 millibars, currently moving west-northwest at 12 miles per hour. It's expected to start weakening pretty quickly and become a remnant low by Monday. At this current point, its current location is 22.1 degrees north, 50.4 degrees west, staying out to sea. Not really going to affect anyone. Maybe we'll launch Phillipe towards the north as the Fujiwara effect starts to kick in the next couple of days or so. It's currently located also 850 miles east-northeast of the northern Leeward Islands, so have to keep that in mind as time continues to go on. Tropical storm force winds also extend out 140 miles from the center. Pressure is 1,002 millibars. Maximum sustained winds are actually decreased to 45 miles per hour. So it was actually 50 earlier. Now it's 45. So it looks like Rina is going to be starting to weaken as time continues to go on. Here's what we have going on. The Rina continues to move west-northwestward at 10 knots. The storm should rotate northeastward and northward on the northern side of Phillipe in the next couple of days. Thereafter, a weakened Rina in its forecast is expected to degenerate into a trough of low pressure and move into the subtropics. The new NHC forecast is pretty similar to the last forecast, with no big changes in the guidance, so it's expected to become a remnant low in the next 2 days or so. So that's the situation we have going on for both of these tropical systems right here. Things are about to get really interesting as time continues to look out for all the stuff that is really starting to go on. And as we continue to get into this active weather period, be sure to check out my friends over at Prestige Weather Consulting. They do individual one-on-one weather consulting catered for your local area. Be sure to use the code PREDICTOR for 50% off your first month. I've been using their plan for a while. They've been doing a really good job with it. So shout out to them once again. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and go to the European model and start running some operational models for all you guys to see. So here's what we have with the European at this current time. This is all the 0Z forecast models we have. The European has Phillipe once again becoming the dominant storm while moving towards the Lesser Antilles, bringing at least quite a few impacts, but while approaching over there, but starting to make that turn more to the north while bringing some impacts to the Leeward Islands, maybe even the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico could see some rainfall from this. And then it's going to start gradually turning, moving at a rather slow pace, and then start gradually strengthening, getting up to a Category 1 hurricane. Then a high-pressure system starts building up and pushes this potentially towards Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, similar to a way Hurricane Larry was in 2021, which I find pretty interesting, so we'll have to keep an eye on it as time continues to go on. Rina just completely dissipates out of nowhere, so we'll have to once again monitor the situation as time continues to go on. For those of you who are in the Lesser Antilles, I would start making some sort of preparation in case this thing does make a close pass and bring some wins and potentially get stronger than anticipated, because we've been seeing just Phillipe be an absolute trooper this whole time it's been out there. So we'll have to continue to keep a very, very close eye on it as time continues to progress. Next model run we're going to go ahead and show you is the GFS model as of right now. Here is the 0Z GFS. GFS has been pretty interesting. GFS is basically calling for this thing to quickly strengthen, mainly stay out to sea, and then just get pushed up further and further to the north, and basically ignore all the high-pressure ridges that are going to build up. And then the GFS does something pretty interesting because of the way this ridge starts really building up. It actually pushes this thing further to the east-southeast. It then stalls and makes a kind of a loop-de-loop, and then makes a turn towards potentially the northeastern Atlantic Ocean while bringing some impacts to the Azores Islands. So that's an interesting situation we need to continue to monitor. If you are in the Azores Islands and you're seeing this model, keep in mind this is like, 10 days out from the GFS. I don't trust this 100%, to be honest with you guys. I will still definitely keep an eye on it for you as time continues to go on, but just take it with a huge grain of salt. That's all I'm really going to say about that. So that's what we have with the GFS model. Next model we're going to show you is the CMC. The CMC has been pretty interesting because it's been looking at Phillipe and Rina, but at the same time, it's been also looking at the Central American gyre that's been going on. It's been actually quite consistent of some potential development for the last several days. So we'll go ahead and show you that. That trend continues as we look into this. Here's the CMC. The CMC is doing kind of what the European's doing and just bringing some sort of impact to the Leeward Islands and the U.S. Virgin Islands and potentially Puerto Rico if it moves far enough to the west, while at the same time starting to gradually strengthen into a hurricane as time continues to go on. Gets down to a 990 millibar system, and then it just doesn't stop there. It gets down to a high-end Category 1 hurricane based off of what I am seeing with pressure alone. Then the high-pressure ridge starts building up. CMC, similar to what the GFS does, just kind of just stalls out here in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean as time continues to go on. But in the meantime, the Central American gyre that I was talking about, starting around October 5th, starts to gradually organize and develop in the Caribbean Sea. And based off of all the warm water and ocean heat content that's over there, that could potentially be a very serious problem if the wind shear is weak enough. And based off of what the CMC is showing, it does look like it may enter the Gulf of Mexico and then just start doing its thing from there. So this is something we need to keep an eye on, especially considering that by the time it starts getting out into the Caribbean Sea, we're about 5 days out by this point. I'd honestly be not that surprised if the NHC does issue like an area of interest with this in the next few days or so, because CMC has been very consistent with this. It was very consistent with Adalia when that gyre was starting to organize and develop. So we'll have to continue to keep a very, very close eye on it as time continues to go on. So that's what we have going on with the CMC model at this current time. Next thing we're going to show you is the NavGem model. The NavGem has been pretty interesting, to say at the very least. NavGem is kind of doing kind of a split between the European and GFS. NavGem is still bringing some impacts to the Leeward Islands, but then it's going to start drifting out to sea as a trough starts to interact with it. Rina just absolutely gets absorbed by this whole trough situation right here, while the NavGem has this thing really intensifying into a pretty strong low-pressure system as it's making a huge approach towards the British Isles. So that's the NavGem. Icon model, last thing we're going to go ahead and show you with the model runs is the Icon. Icon is kind of interesting, to say at the very least. Icon's doing similar to what the European and NavGem are calling for, kind of making a close impact towards the Antilles, and then just kind of drifts out to sea while strengthening into a hurricane at that current point. So that's what we have going on with all these model runs at the current time right here. Still have to pay a very close attention to that gyre as we continue to get more data. But now we're going to go ahead and show you the conditions. Patrick, what are these conditions you're talking about? Well, let's go ahead and show you. We have global sea temperatures across the MDR. Where Phillipe is right now, it's an area of 30 plus degrees Celsius waters, or 86 degrees Fahrenheit waters, for those of you who live in the United States and Puerto Rico. So, based off of what I'm seeing, plenty of warm water for Phillipe to start organizing and developing. It's just the shear that's a problem. And where this gyre is expected to come off 29, 30, maybe 31 degrees Celsius, or 84 to 87 degrees Fahrenheit for those of you who live in the U.S., that's where this thing's going to be. So, yeah, that's a very interesting situation, considering we are still looking at these record high global sea temperatures across the place at this point. Now that we have the global sea temperatures out, let's go ahead and show you the ocean heat content. Continues to be very, very, very alarming to take a look at this current point. Here's what we have with the OHC. The Gulf Stream showing OHC values of over 175 in some areas, where the Caribbean is showing areas of well over 200 OHC, which, if that gyre does start to initiate and the shear is weak enough, well, if it enters this area right here, it can quickly intensify into something we absolutely do not want to see at this current point in the season. It's getting into October. We're starting to transition away from these these Cape Verde setups and more towards these Caribbean setups as the conditions start to get better over there. So that's what we have with the OHC. Last thing we're showing you is the wind shear. Where Phillipe is right now, there is some wind shear that is starting to impact it. It's not particularly that much though, so we'll still keep an eye on it for sure. I'm definitely going to keep an eye on it, but in the meantime, it's going to be a gradual strengthening, as the NHC is saying, primarily due to that wind shear, just keeping this thing sheared like a sheep. And then with the Caribbean, the shear is going to continue fluctuating off and on, off and on, off and on, off and on for the next several days or so. So definitely something we need to keep an eye on as time continues to go on. We're closing the video out right here. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new. It helps us out, helps us make more videos like these. The goal of this channel is to get more people engaged with weather. But with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.